Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I want to do something a bit different. Over Christmas I was lucky enough to get this really nice 25 pounder and quad dual kit from Warlord, but there is something that scares many a bolt action gamer but also a wargamer as whole, is that it's a resin and metal kit. A lot of people going plastic only, and there's a lot of kind of fear over particularly artillery pieces that are in metal or resin and metal vehicles. I kind of wanted to use today's video as a bit of a how to approach resin and metal, particularly from Warlord, and a comparison with, I've got the Rubicon 25 pounder or 17 pounder kit here. And actually I am not always against resin and metal, and in some ways it can take just as long as plastic. So as you can see behind me, we've got the contents of the kit here. I think it retails for around £45. You get a vehicle, 25 pounder crew, and of course, it being a Warlord kit, you get your bag of flames, a couple of bases and 2 order dice. You also get your transfers. Limited use for me, the regiment numbers will be useful, but as I'm doing it for Sicily, unfortunately it won't be 7th Armoured Division. But in front of me, and this is the first step I recommend, is just get all the parts out and lay them out neatly so you can see what you're doing with. I'd also recommend as well, you'll get some like little venti pieces, maybe pieces of metal sprue. Don't get rid of them straight away. The amount of times it's actually been a bent piece of aerial and then I've got rid of it and then halfway through go, oh, I'm actually supposed to get that as a part, and you don't get it, is frustrating. So this kit also comes with instructions. Now, particularly the weapon artillery blisters might necessarily not, but there's usually instructions on the website. So I recommend just Googling the weapon you've got and typing in Warlord Games instructions. There's usually a kind of simple instruction sheet. As you can see, they just do it all as one stage, and it's just kind of pointing where they should go. So there's going to be a lot of dry fitting involved. But in front of me, you've got a mix of parts. They don't split, the quad, which is this thing, and the 25 pounder. We've got crew figures, all sorts of bits of bobs. Some of these parts are on sprues, and what you also find is some of the parts, which were on sprues, have fallen off, and that's absolutely fine. So the first step is you want to take any resin pieces particularly. So here we've got the trailer and the quad. As you can see, there's a little bit of a shine to this. So this will be the releasing agent. If it was a little oily to the touch, maybe, not too much. And what I like to do, particularly resin pieces, you can do it for all the metal pieces, is give it a good scrub. So just get some warm, soapy water and get a little bit of scrub and then thoroughly dry it. And then we'll return for the next step. So the resin parts have been all washed, the release agents come off, or bits of the release agent were still on it. So the next step I like to do is just prep all the parts now. So there's lots still on sprues. For the smaller parts, possibly keep them on, but there's going to be some flash. So on the resin kits, for instance, there's a small vent here, so best to clip that off. And then also on this ammo cart here, you can see this part here doesn't need to be on there. So just some accurate clipping, and then clearing all of the little vent parts off the metal. It doesn't take too long, just use like a nice sharp hobby knife. Always cut away. We've all made that mistake of cutting towards and then nipping the finger. And just prep all the parts, take your time. I wouldn't rush at all. Maybe use, obviously there's usually a little bit of flash at the bottom of the bases, use a nice file there. Doesn't take long, and it is a fairly unexciting process to watch. So I'll cut back when all the parts are prepped ready for assembly. So I've cleaned up the parts for the quad to start off with, and now it's time for assembly. So as you can see from the instructions here, it's all very simple. There's going to be a couple of parts that might be a bit more difficult to do. So you've got this small hook here, that's attaching to a metal part which is attaching to the chassis. And I think the most difficult parts are going to be those mud guards there. But my top tip is take your time with metal and resin models. You get very used to plastic models where a little bit of Tamiya extra thin or Revel glue or whatever plastic glue you use gets tacky and it sticks immediately. It's all precision. You don't get that so much with resin and metal models. There'll be bigger holes for them to set in, and for example, so looking at these wheels here, on this kit, the wheels connect to this bar here. Now, as you can see, the bar has a little bit of a bend to it, nothing major, and this isn't going to be, because it's metal cast completely, actually that's pretty good as metal pieces go. But if you look here, there's going to be like some slight variation depending on how you want to do. So it could sit there, it could sit there. It's not going to be completely flush. If I put my finger here to the connectors flush, the wheel's going to stick out a little bit. So think about there would be best. So obviously dry fitting's really important. Now when it comes to glue, I just use Loctite super glue. I like using these small sachets because inevitably super glue dries up. So if a small sachet dries up, it's no big issue. I recommend the thick stuff rather than the thin stuff. It just gives you a bit more for these pieces to bind onto. I know some people use Gorilla Glue or use activators. I've always found these Loctites to be absolutely fine, really, and fairly easy to get. Supermarkets will stock them, stationery shops, kind of wherever, really. So I'm not going to build the whole model on camera, but to show where patience is needed. So we'll open this up. Hopefully there's still some left here. There is. Get a good squeeze. That's a nice, as you can see, thick dollop there. I'm just going to build it like so. So what we want to do, see, I probably brought it in a little bit too much there actually. We're just going to hold it straight. Obviously be careful to not get too much super glue on your actual fingers, as one of the common experiences I found when building resin and metal models is sticking the parts to your own fingers rather than the actual model. So as you can see here, it's not completely dry. As I can see, as it's fallen off. So that's an example where super glue will take a bit longer to dry. So let's just reattach it there and hold on. And this is where the thick glue is quite handy, so it gives you more room for error with the parts. There's big gaps, whereas the thin glue, if there's a bit of a gap between the parts, then the super glue might not connect with each other and adhere. So I just want to hold it. I can feel my index finger there sticking a little bit to the part, which is lovely. I'm just going to hold that for a while. I do recommend either having some music on or maybe a YouTube video or something else while you assemble a resin metal model, as there's a lot of waiting around. It's not like you can put this down to cut out the next piece. It's going to be a case of just holding it until it gets nice and secure. And there we are. The handy thing as well is I always try and use gravity to help you. So it's stuck down there. We can pop it down and let it dry without having to apply any more pressure. So I'm going to stick the rest of the model together and maybe show you if there's a difficult bit or so. So that's the quad all assembled. Took around 15 minutes, not too bad at all. The mudguards, as I thought, were a little fiddly, but not as fiddly as I thought. So a way that's quite handy, so if you just flip the model over, there was actually, as you can just see it there, a small resin line where the mudguard extends to. So if I just flip them over, big wad of super glue there. As you can see, a little bit still there actually. Just let it dry. Sticks pretty well. It's now able to flip over. The back was fine. I was worried that it would be a bit fiddly. No issues at all. And then the front bonnet was fine as well. So that is the quad done. I think resin and metal models are actually a bit easier when they've got like a kind of block of resin that you're really sticking parts to. The challenge is with the artillery guns because it's all these different interlocking pieces. And that's what we're going to approach next. So I'll show you all the pieces of the 25 pounder and how I'm going to go about gluing it together. Because while if you look on the instructions, it's just one whole assembly. I think there's clearly going to be some parts that you're going to want to stick. You want to stick the wheels together first and see how the axle fits with the base. And then obviously you need to fit the gun shield over, but is that going to be easy to fit over when the gun's on the actual gun carriage? I have to have a play around with the pieces themselves. But I'll be back in a sec because I need more super glue. So we're back. It's a new day. The super glue stocks have been restocked. So lots of lovely little tubes there ready to go. Now you may have seen actually on the quad earlier I had glued the part to the wrong area. I'd actually glued the bar up here, but that's fine. Literally could just put it off. A little bit of super glue residue there, but nothing a craft knife can't get off at all. So there's the completed quad model. Nice chunky piece of kit there. And it's time to approach the most challenging part of the kit, which is the 25 pounder itself. So I've cleaned up all the parts. I've been playing around with dry fitting, and it's something I really recommend. Is because it's just one stage on here, it's just spend 5-10 minutes dry fitting different pieces and working out what stage makes the most sense to start off with. Now on the gun, I've actually decided that the best stage is to glue the axle to the gun first. And that's because if you notice on the axle here, one part is slightly flat, and that is the part that if you see here, will go in and rest up against this plate here. So that's the first place to go. From there, I'll most likely put the wheels on, then work out putting the barrel on and seeing where the gun shield itself rests. And at the end of it, then sticking it to the mount, which this is unique to the 25 pounder, something slightly different. And then once it's all kind of assembled, I'll then glue it onto the base. But I'll return once the model's all assembled before we glue it on the base, because the next thing I want to talk about is metal models and kind of basing and mini construction parts before you paint, and why I recommend don't glue it all together, glue it all on the base and then paint. Maybe leave some sub-assemblies out. So after around 45 minutes assembling, the gun and trailer are now complete. It's just weighed quite a bit actually as a fully metal model. The gun was really simple to put together, didn't have any issues at all. Started with the axle, from there put the wheels on, and the gun barrel, gun shield, and then finally onto the turnstile, probably like the maybe gun table. I'm sure there's a correct term that I'm missing there. But yeah, really nice. Feels quite solid, which is good. And then we have the trailer, which was certainly the fiddliest part. Because on the 25 pounder trailer, you have these brackets that the doors would swing open to and keep open for the shells. A little bit fiddly, but using the gel super glue again meant that it was a bit easier for them to stick together. It's not going to be the most flush fix ever, but with some paint, it's going to look pretty good. So with the kit, you get this large oval base, and you basically set it up a little bit like this, and then you've got the three crew figures here, can't be serving the gun. I've decided instead I'm going to go with 60mm bases. I think it's a consideration between ease of play and how good it looks. So on the table, this will look fantastic if it's on a flat piece of terrain. Transporting it's going to be a bit more of an issue, particularly if you like me and use kind of multi-case. The KR multi-case is the foam inserts. When I tested it, And this 25 pounder does actually fit on the 60mm, and then have the crew figures arranged around it. And then in a separate 60mm, I will put the ammunition trailer. So it works quite nicely there. In a game, you could easily put it up against a 25 pounder just for some looks. You could also use it as an objective maybe, or just kind of a nice table scatter to work. But that way, it just makes it a bit easier to transport and a bit more wieldy on the table. So yeah, quite happy with them now they're all assembled. So there's not going to be a painting guide here, but one tip I did want to say was around painting a kit like this. So my recommendation would always be to glue the gun to the base once you're all set, and then work out the positions of your crew figures. As you can see here, you've got this guy sweating a little bit with his wiping his brow, the classic figure carrying a shell, and then a final one here who's topless, obviously in the, I think these are desert heat, but Sicily was very hot during Operation Husky as well. So what I like to do is to set them out in a way that looks nice and want to glue them down, but I don't glue them down. I always like to paint the crew figure separately. But what I recommend you do is you put loads of paint on the bottom of the base. When you've like worked out the configuration, splosh it down. So what you should end up, this is for a 15mm model, is something like this. And what that tells you is the way the figures will be lined up. So you can put the gun down, paint the gun as per usual, do some basing, then stick the figures on and finish the basing. That way it leaves a kind of more complete looking model. It does take a bit of time, but I think for the end product with these, it's certainly worth it. So overall, that is a nice little guide on how to best go about assembling resin and metal models. Take your time, do a lot of dry fitting, clean up all the pieces, and it's not as bad as you think. Now on a final part, I want to talk about sometimes the plastic models themselves can have issues. Now, at the time of recording, the only plastic 28mm artillery pieces you can get for World War II are by Rubicon. I do actually have their combined 25 pounder and 17 pounder pheasant kit. As you can see, there's lots of parts in this. Rubicon are more model, well, they kind of straddle between wargaming and model making, whereas Warlord are firmly in the wargaming sphere. I'm not a massive fan of building models myself, and it can take a while. So for instance, I have recently built this Rubicon 6 pounder. Well, it's a fantastically detailed model, but it did take around an hour and a half to build, as so many finicky little pieces that would be abstracted out a little bit on a 28mm metal model, but it looks quite nice. So they're about the same price range. The resin metal ones are a little bit more expensive. I got the 25 pounder from Rubicon for £18. This kit together is in the low 40s mark. But when you add the quad, it's probably about a £5 or more for the resin and metal models. But the big difference is I'm not a massive fan of the kind of true scale styling. I prefer heroic scale, Warlord scale crew figures. So for me, I mean, I will paint these guys up and they'll look good on the gun, but I do prefer the slightly chunkier sculpts, maybe have a little bit more character to them. So it's not a slam dunk. I would say I probably do agree with people when they say Rubicon artillery pieces, Warlord crew, but that is also the most expensive way to go about it. This has actually been a really quite enjoyable kit to build up. I really like all of the gear on the back of the quad. Makes it look a bit differently. But there we are. So a guide on how to do resin and metal models. Take your time. Don't panic. It'll all be okay. And on my socials, once these are painted up, I'm sure I'll post a few pictures. So thank you very much for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.